his house.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerate it. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Wednesday, it's midweek, got politics. I'm pretty sure there's a channel called Midweek Politics somewhere. Cheers to anybody who gets that reference. All right, so boy, do we have an interesting show today. So we've got some things that we're going to talk about. We've got, of course, how the coronavirus task force is going. I bet you were waiting for that update. It's not going well. Put simply, not going well. We're going to talk about that. We've got Donald Trump and his fake black supporters. Awesome. We also have the senior vote and how the Trump campaign is disastrously bad. We've also got Coney Barrett. And her very pro-corporate racist decision in her past and all that stuff. So got some fun times here. Interesting, fun stories, as always. And so please, I hope you stay right here for the remainder of the stream. Whether it be an hour or a little bit more, which we usually run around like an hour and 10 minutes, sometimes earlier, sometimes not. But hopefully you stay for that. Please like and share the stream. Very important that you help out. Dango, I know exactly what you're talking about, which is also part of the joke. Oh, my God. Oh, I need to go. I would love to use that at some point. I'm just saying. You know. You guys know. You guys know. For those of you who don't, I suggest you Google Alden's number. It's fucking hilarious. All right, anyway. I know, I'm dropping F-bombs. Hello on Twitch. Hello on Facebook and YouTube. All the different wonderful places that we are streaming today. Hopefully you're ready for some politics. Let's dive into it. Let's start out with how the coronavirus task force is doing. Oh boy. You're going to enjoy this. All right. As coronavirus cases continue to spike in the United States as winter approaches, the White House CoVid task force is in open rebellion as a result of Donald Trump. The Daily Beast is reporting that nearly all of the top health experts in the task force have been driven to their wits' end by Donald Trump. So this is the coronavirus task force is the the organization inside the White House that's supposed to be helping to control the coronavirus. So they're out there supposedly, basically saying this is the information that you need to keep yourself safe. This is the suggestions that we're doing for policy in order to deal with coronavirus and the resulting, of course, economic fallout. These are our suggestions. And so they're literally trying to work to basically help people survive, which is what they're supposed to do. However, it's not going well. It's not going well at all. And the Daily Beast writes, after months of trying to avoid direct run-ins with the president, task force officials are no longer tiptoeing around Trump's demands. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Health and Infectious Disease, has for weeks spoken out against one of the fellow members. Now, this fellow member of the task force is now Donald Trump's favorite. So this is Dr. Scott Atlas, who is a neuroradiologist who has no experience in dealing with infectious disease, but is Donald Trump's go-to guy. Well, why is that? It's because he's putting out positive news and also cherry-picking data. So, that's nice. So, of course, as a result of that, Donald Trump is no longer, he hasn't really ever taken coronavirus seriously, let's be honest. He's not going out there and saying we should all wear masks, we should do social distancing or anything like that. He's using basically arguments from Dr. Atlas that suggests that, masks, they don't really do anything. You don't have to wear them. And everything's fine. We should just open up the country. Here we go. Now, more recently, Dr. Fauci has even accused the Trump campaign of harassing him. Wow. So, harassment. Wow. All right, there's more. Robert Redfield, director of the CDC, has gone after Atlas as well, claiming that, quote, everything he says is false. The CDC has pushed back against the White House's preference to not recommending testing asymptomatic individuals who can who can spread the virus to other people. That's why it's important to test asymptomatic people so you know who's infectious and who is not. And if you know that somebody's infectious, then you can actually isolate them and prevent other people from getting coronavirus, which is what they did not do in the White House. That's why over 30 staffers in the White House have come down with coronavirus. It's the guy's a super spreader. And not only is he spreading disinformation, but he's also spreading coronavirus everywhere. And so, and yet that's why he prefers, Trump prefers Dr. Atlas because, Atlas allows him to do it. Now, there's more. Despite demands by the White House that they remain under wraps, guidelines for COVID-19 vaccine makers that would make a release before the election virtually impossible were published last week by the FDA. So these guidelines, again, Donald Trump wants more than anything a vaccine for coronavirus. Now, look, I want a vaccine for coronavirus, but I want to make sure that that's safe and that it actually works. We don't have those guarantees yet, and I'm sorry, but it takes a while to actually get a vaccine that has been tested properly in clinical trials and that is deemed to be safe and effective. We do not have that. We were never going to have that before the election, regardless of who was president. We were not going to have that because it takes a while to do. And so Donald Trump doesn't give a damn. He's like, no. I want it before the election. I want it now so that we can get back to business, the stock market can go back up, and that I can win re-election. That, unfortunately, did not happen. And now, of course, the White House is livid that the FDA would actually publish these guidelines. As for comment about the increasing frustration among officials, the White House spokesperson, Brian Morgenstern, did not directly speak to the task force tensions and instead said this, quote, President Trump's top priority is the health and safety of the American people. Right. Morgenstern did acknowledge, however, after dodging that question, that Donald Trump sometimes disagrees with task force officials in good faith. Are you kidding me? No one in their right mind believes that. Oh, no, he disagrees, but he's acting in good faith. Right. Okay. Sure. All right. That account, by the way, is being rebuked by prior administration officials who say that this type of tension is basically unheard of and has pointed to what they call a growing rebellion among the ranks of the president's coronavirus task force. So this has gotten quite serious. For example, this is Tom Frieden, former director of the CDC under the Obama administration. The Obama administration that dealt with H1N1 and Ebola much more efficiently than Donald Trump has dealt with the coronavirus. Here's what he said. In prior emergencies with which Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx had been through, there have been better and worse responses. Oh, well, okay, well, that kind of makes the Trump administration not look quite as horrible. Oh, except when you add in this, quote, they've all shared some fundamental basic competence. To which the plain fact is that the administration's response to COVID has lacked that basic competence. So, in layman's terms, he just called the Trump administration incompetent. Yeah. Look, I think the things that Trump and the Republican Party, by the way, that enables him should be remembered for is the deep, deep level of absolute incompetence that surrounded everything that they've done on coronavirus. Simple as that. From not having a plan to not having any sort of organization, and then, of course, playing off failures, and just completely ignoring the failures, not even playing them off. They're just ignoring them. And they're basically pitching, and this is what, look, any Democratic strategist that might be watching, take note, right? This is basically the equivalent of the administration's response. It's basically the equivalent of pitching that mission accomplished banner on the aircraft carrier. That's what they've done. Coronavirus, we pretty much handled it. It's fine. But wait, cases are going up. I said it's fine. Open up the economy. Send the kids back to school. No, let's not do that. No, that's a terrible idea. Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. But they're doing it anyway. Mission accomplished. Donald Trump, he had it. He's over it now, allegedly. And, well, I mean, now we can get back to normal. Don't let the virus control your life. Oh, my God. Look, we're actually worse off now than before we originally started the closure of the economy. We're worse off when it comes to virus numbers, not just the economics, but the virus numbers as well. Okay, and the reason, of course, is that nobody stuck to it. Okay, nobody stuck to it, and so we've got more people dead. We have more people. We have over 7 million people that are infected, and the numbers are starting to spike again, which we were warned was going to happen if we didn't mask up and socially distance. Of course. Frieden continues by pointing this out. He said there's not been a consistent messaging from the federal government. Plus, there's been a politicization of mask wearing and a lack of discipline in thinking about when to close and what to open. You know, like gyms. And he added, quote, it's mind-boggling. And, of course, it's causing major friction inside the White House, as I mentioned, with this, as observers note. With Trump increasingly turning to Atlas for guidance, Birx, Fauci, and Redfield have all been sidelined. Yep. And in recent interviews, Fauci has said the task force isn't even meeting often as it used to. Sometimes once a week. Birx has been on the road, participating only in local media interviews. And Redfield, meanwhile, has participated in virtually zero media appearances after a recent series of run-ins with the White House over masks, testing, and school reopening guidelines. Even as the former director of the CDC, William Fauci, had sent a public letter urging him to, quote, stand up to a bully. And then, of course, there was a story the other day where Jonathan Karl, ABC News, wanted to get Fauci onto the program on Sunday to which the White House had blocked him from doing. No, you cannot go on ABC News this week to talk about the coronavirus. Not going to happen. And then they go and lie and gaslight about it and say, oh, what are you talking about? You didn't invite anybody other than Dr. Fauci. To which, of course, the email, which was shown as part of receipts. So we saw, Jonathan Karl's private emails between him and the Trump administration, the communications director, asking for Dr. Birx, and like a whole bunch of other administration officials other than just Dr. Fauci, if Dr. Fauci was not available. So, proven to be complete and utter lies. Complete and utter lies. But there's more. Andy Slavitt, Obama's former director of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, says this, quote, I have a lot of respect for Dr. Birx, and I think she has an understanding of what needs to be done. I think she does do her best to go out and explain those messages, because the science is not that complicated anymore. I think there's a limited amount that they can do without the support of their boss, so they got to make do with the person who sits in the Oval Office. Even if that person, and this is what I'm adding, is a raging moron who does everything that he can to try to undermine the work of the coronavirus task force. That's why this is happening, by the way, because Donald Trump is actively undermining the entire point of the task force. It's just, now for Fauci, of course, it gets worse because now there's a very public feud going on between Donald Trump and Dr. Fauci. In fact, Fauci called out the Trump campaign after they decided to take his words out of context in a recent Trump ad to make Donald Trump look like he had done amazing on the coronavirus, which we all know he did not. Quote, by doing this against my will, they are, in effect, harassing me. He's accusing the Trump campaign of harassment. There's more. Since campaign ads are about getting votes, their harassment of me might have the opposite effect of turning some voters off. You think? Yeah. There's more details from other insiders as well. A senior administration official who works with the White House task force points out how Donald Trump is more worried about the election, something that we already knew, but of course, it's just more confirmation. He said as the election heated up, it got harder to get him to focus on the guidelines and data that we believe to be most important to saving lives. That is still the case now. It has been known that if you're bringing something to him that isn't likely to help his reelection or get the economy open to his liking, again, then you might as well not be presenting it to the president at all. So if it doesn't help him personally or politically, then he doesn't care to see it. Even if it means, or it is something that could potentially save people's lives, he ain't interested in seeing it. Not at all. His election is literally more important to him than your life. And unlike other politicians, which certainly that can be true to an extent, he can barely pretend otherwise. Like, he can't even put on a facade that he gives a shit. Like, he just doesn't care. In fact, Olivia Troy, former senior advisor for the task force, who left back in August, and has since, of course, endorsed Joe Biden, talked about how the president would show up to the meetings and just ask things like, quote, is this worse than the flu? And children aren't affected, right? Only to be told that, yes, they can be affected, and no, it's not like the flu. So, by the way, those are all Fox News talking points. So he would go and he would watch Fox and Friends, and then he would live tweet, and then he would go and bring that to the coronavirus meetings and say, hey, I heard this, I heard children can't be affected. They can be infected, and they can super spread. And that's it. And by the way, when they would explain these things, she'd explain that they would quote, or that he would quote, kind of nod along, but then go out in public and say the opposite. This would happen all the time, and it was infuriating. Yeah. Dr. Fauci would tell the vice president and some of his senior staff that children could be major spreaders of it because the data is inconclusive, only to see the administration and Trump completely disregard it over and over again. And again, he couldn't even pretend to be interested in the virus at all. Troy recalled that in some meetings with the members of the COVID task force earlier this year, the president would routinely get distracted, i.e. bored, and instead want to talk about media that pissed him off. Not interested. What are you talking about? I want to talk about CNN because they did a very negative story on me, and I was very, very mad. Mr. President, we're actually trying to talk about coronavirus and the fact that we're seeing increasing death tolls. And just shut up. I want to talk about fake news CNN. I'm very, very bad. In fact, here's what they said. Quote, at times, he would go around the room and spend his time complimenting people for their recent TV appearances. He would compliment Kellyanne Conway or someone on how well he thought someone did, saying, oh, you did a great job on that today. Because, again, all he cares about is TV appearances. This was during meetings when we were trying to get him to focus on matters of life and death around the country. He don't care. He doesn't care. He never cared. It's always been about him. Understand that when he talks about something, even stimulus, because, for example, he comes out and he says, we need big stimulus. We need even bigger stimulus. For one, he's not going to get that. Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are, massively against a stimulus bill. Additional. And so, no, they're not going to get what he's not going to get what he wants. But the reason that he's doing it, by the way, is he's worried about his reelection. And so that's what he says. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you health care. It's going to be great. So that he can get support and votes. And I'm not saying that other politicians don't do that. It's just that it's nakedly obvious that he's lying to the people in order to get that result, in order to get people to vote for him at the last minute. Because he knows he's in trouble, and he knows electorally, and he might be worried about, I don't know, some of the stuff that might happen after the election. He's about as selfish as you can get. And I really want people to understand, he's not on your side. His whole worldview is that I don't work for you. You work for me. Everyone is my employee. That I'm not a public servant. The public serves me. He doesn't want to be a leader. He wants to be your boss. He fundamentally does not understand the meaning of service. And so if you elect him for another 4 years, understand exactly what you're getting. Someone who is going to put himself above everything else, even if it means your death. That's just the truth. All right. Well, let's move on here. Whoop. President Trump, like all Republicans, has an issue with black voters. Now, polls have Trump getting around 10% of support from the African-American community, much like, of course, other Republican candidates. Back in 2016, he actually got about 8% of the black vote. Yet, unlike other campaigns, he actually wants you to believe that his black support is much, much higher than what it really is. Now, helping him spread that message are people, of course, like Candace Owens, who claim that a large amount of black supporters are walking away from the Democratic Party. Okay? Despite, of course, the lack of evidence here. But if you don't pay attention to the studies and only pay attention, of course, to social media, you might be I don't know, you might actually believe that message. And that's, of course, Trump and his campaign has an army of bots and fake accounts backing him up, some of which were just suspended by Twitter. On Wednesday, Forbes reports that Twitter was suspending several fake accounts posing as black supporters of President Donald Trump, saying that they violate the guidelines on spam and account manipulation. Many of these accounts use identical language over and over, like, yes, I'm black and I'm voting for Trump. So it's real bot-like activity. All right. Now, some used images of real black people without their knowledge or without their permission. So that's also how you know that these are fake, right? So literally fake bots. If their black support was so high, well, then they would not have to use bots. So now, according to Clemson University communications professor Daryl Linville, 24 of these fake accounts have been retweeted or promoted over 265,000 times. So this is a result of the right-wing echo chamber. They don't actually have that much support. Now, I'm not saying that no black person will vote for Donald Trump. No, there are black people that will. Absolutely. Take this picture, for example, right? So this was from an event that actually happened where they were, getting black support for Trump, blacks for Trump, right? And there were actually black people there that were wearing no shirts. As I just said, polls have him at about 10% African-American support, as opposed to, of course, 90% who support Democrats. And so that kind of shows you the breakdown. One in 10 African-Americans are actually Republicans or conservative. So I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're a very, very small minority of a minority. And so, nonetheless, you see all this inflation of Trump's black support, giving people a false idea that there's this massive move away from Democrats to Republicans when it comes to the black community. That it's just not true. It's not true. But again, you've got bot accounts that will tweet and retweet, and then, of course, actual followers will do so as well. And it makes it appear that Republicans have a groundswell of support when they actually don't. And again, add in people like Candace Owens, the Hodge twins, and other high-paid black voices that run this insane conservative grift, and it makes you think, holy crap, they must really have some support from the black community. They're walking away from the Democrats and they're supporting Donald Trump. But you got to ask, why would black people support Republicans? Why would they support Donald Trump? Well, let's be honest. Do the Democrats take advantage of the black vote? Yeah, they actually do. Do they underdeliver? Overpromise, underdeliver? Absolutely. Let's be honest about that, of course. Of course, right? The establishment has been giving lip service to the black community for decades, while still, of course, supporting police. For example, the school-to-prison pipeline, tough on crime laws. For example, Joe Biden with the crime bill, predatory capitalism that has a greater impact, a negative impact on the black community than on other groups, which also, of course, has negative impacts on other groups as well. So the Democrats are not fantastic on racial issues. They're kind of bad. But if you turn around and really wonder why black voters still overwhelmingly support Democrats, it's because, as bad as Democrats are on some of these issues, they're not openly racist like the Republican Party. The Republican Party openly courts white nationalists and white supremacist groups like the Proud Boys. And also because they don't defend, for example, black people and their Second Amendment rights. People like Kenneth Walker, Philando Castile, E.J. Bradford. All of those were black men that had legal licensed weaponry. They were legal gun owners, okay? And they were still either shot and killed or punished for defending themselves against police. In the case of Kenneth Walker, of course, he was returning fire after police broke into his girlfriend's apartment. He said he was defending himself because he believed that these people were breaking in, these plainclothes police officers. And so you have those issues, okay? And not only that, but they use constant dog whistles, like referring to black people as referring to issues like Chicago, for example, as urban. Or they, continue to use the welfare queen smear against black people as well. And so they also support voter suppression, obviously. And so you would wonder why any black people would want to be a Republican. And then, of course, you can answer that question by looking by really looking at who in the black community is a Republican, and it comes down to really a couple of different factors. They either have money or have money and are extremely religious, and they know their place. That's what I'm saying. So a lot of that is why there's not really a mass movement of black voters to the Republican Party. And there, of course, there's other factors as well. If anything, we see a lot of younger black voters actually go way to the left that are fleeing both parties. Bernie Sanders, for example, was heavily favored among younger African Americans as well as Latinos. They supported him by quite a large margin. So without that groundswell of support, Donald Trump has turned to bots and trolls. And of course, if you can remember, early in 2015, there were stories coming out about how Donald Trump originally paid people to come to his events. So he would pay people for that. And of course, then, after a while, then he started getting those bigger organic crowds. But at first, he had to pay people. And now, of course, you have bots, trolls. I don't know if those people are specifically paid or not, or where they come from, but they're not real people. They're not actually real people. And so, that said, here, you've got Isabel to go saying this. Social media platforms are now, as a result, scrambling to tighten and enforce policies on misinformation and disinformation in the run-up to November 3rd, as they seek to avoid a repeat of the 2016 poll that saw Russia interfere through troll accounts and other tactics on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Twitter has banned all political ads in the platform and is flagging misleading posts and content more prominently, including President Trump's, while Facebook has succumbed to pressure from lawmakers and campaigners and made a last-minute U-turn on certain forms of misinformation spreading, including those related to COVID-19, QAnon, and Holocaust denial. Now, look, I think banning bot accounts is fine. There shouldn't be anything controversial about banning bots. It gets a little bit more dicey when you start putting these companies in charge of being the arbiters of truth. That I'm not necessarily in favor of. Facebook, by the way, for example, uses the Daily Wire as a fact-checking organization. That's Ben Shapiro's outlet. So I don't necessarily trust their perspective. A little bit of a problem there. There's also questions on censorship when it comes, and that's, of course, pretty important to consider. But also, you have to make sure not to allow people to spread disinformation. So it can get really dicey balancing freedom of speech, corporate control over information that is shared by people, and making sure that false information that does harm doesn't get propagated. And so I think at this point we're really in uncharted waters when it comes to social media. And nobody really has any good definitive answers, and much less a plan that, of course, addresses all three of these concerns. And in the interim, you got campaigns from both sides that use bots and trolls. Famous example comes from 2016 when a Democratic strategist, Sally Albright, got busted operating a network of trolls. These were anti-Bernie Sanders troll accounts. They would go and harass Bernie Sanders supporters. They would spread fake news just as much as the pro-Trump accounts on social media. And Twitter, they did not ban her. They did not take any action against Sally Albright, even though there were exposés and stories about her. So there's a real issue on them not being fair and really applying the same standards for the establishment they do, of course, for the right wing. And so that's really important as well, because as somebody who's a progressive and who cares about being fair and being honest and seeing the truth, That bothers me, seeing the double standard from some of these social media companies. And so seeing these companies bend towards the establishment does bother me. So at this point, look, it's basically a mess. And what we're going to need is some real solutions here, because this is far beyond Donald Trump. Fake bots and trolls and all this. This problem, this is not going away. This is going to continue to get worse, and we're going to have to come up with some sort of policy solutions somewhere, somehow. All right. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We've got Donald Trump mock seniors, made fun of seniors in this strange attempt to punk Joe Biden. It's really interesting. So we'll come back with that. Then we've got Amy Coney Barrett and more. So stay right here. We'll be back around the nation.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat.
Wet ass P word.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here. All right, so got a super chat here. Thanks to James Williams. Appreciate that. Spreader boy. Oh, boy. All right. Fun times. By the way, I was going to do this story about Donald Trump going to rip open his shirt like he's Superman, which is just both. Look, I can understand why some people look at Donald Trump and think that guy's super entertaining. It's clownish, but entertaining. But that's the thing. Do you really want that as a president, as opposed to, of course, entertaining you on TV. Like trying to solve the nation's problems, no, I would not, because he has no idea and doesn't even basically care about solving the problems of the country. And so there's that. It's just a crazy, crazy, ridiculous, stupid moment. It's amazing. But anyway, let's go to how he's doing with seniors. Here we go. President Donald Trump is not doing well with senior citizens. But don't worry, he's got a plan to get them back by making fun of senior citizens. Yeah. All right. Biden for resident. Okay. Look, that is actually kind of funny, but also terrible. Wow. You realize, though, Donald Trump himself is also a senior citizen. Biden is 77. Donald Trump is 74. There's only about a 3-year difference. Fake orange hair aside, Donald Trump is an older gentleman. So it doesn't really make sense for him to be like, oh, look at that old dude. You are also old. I'm just saying. But here's the thing. This spectacularly backfired on him. Because it turns out that insulting older people is not a way to get support from older people. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Look, it's the same thing. Think about this. If you shit on millennials and Gen Z and ignore their financial realities and tell them to get over it, right? Well, that's not a great way to reach out to younger voters, is it? It's the same thing when you tell old people, hey, ha, you're old. That's not really going to do much for older people. I'm just saying. And so, as an example of this in action, Trump has been losing support from seniors, especially in important states like Florida. For example, Trump had a 9 percentage point advantage with voters 65 and older back in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, of course, we know was a disaster. Now, numerous polls, however, have shown that Biden now leads Trump with that group by a wide margin. In fact, a recent national Fox News poll found Biden had a narrow lead with the voters 65 and older. A CNN poll found Biden was up by 21 percentage points with 60% for Biden and 39% for Trump. I would assume, of course, the real numbers are a little bit more in the middle of that. NBC News also found Biden with a 14-point lead among all registered voters against Trump, and CNN found Biden with a 16-point lead against Donald Trump. And again, the senior community is definitely more on Biden's side this time. So now the thing that's important about senior voters is they tend to be more reliable. It's what, let's be honest, it's one of the things that drove Biden to victory in the primary. You had older voters that supported Biden over Bernie Sanders. Simple as that. And unfortunately, and this is something that we've had a major problem with among Democrats, is younger people don't turn out as reliably as senior voters. And there are many different reasons for that. And some are really good reasons. For example, work schedules, school schedules, inability to access transport or child care. There are reasons like that. And of course, there's also voter apathy. And that's something that shouldn't be ignored as well. And so as a result, older people tend to turn out more, and older people, and I'm not saying this I'm saying more in general, because this is what the information, this is what the polling bears out. And I realize that I have a lot of older people in my audience that are massively progressive, and you guys have been fighting for the good fight for decades, for longer than I've been alive. This doesn't count you, okay? You are on the right side. You are fighting for the right thing. But generally, as a trend, older voters tend to be more conservative. and so have tended to watch television more often, and therefore have gotten that establishment perspective and tend to vote more for the establishment. And so there's that. All right. And so, again, they voted for Biden, which, weirdly enough, Bernie Sanders, not weirdly enough, yes, it's weird that they voted for Biden because Bernie Sanders is actually better for seniors, calling for expansions to Social Security benefits, and, of course, a better Medicare system. They already had Medicare, yes, but Medicare itself in its current form is certainly not perfect. Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan is actually far more comprehensive because it would have added things like vision and dental, which generally doesn't get offered by current Medicare. They have to usually go through a supplemental plan. And so better for seniors. But if you watch establishment news, if you watch cable TV, MSNBC included, they're not going to put in that nuance. They're not going to talk about the issues. They're not going to talk about policy. And that's, of course, one of the big problems with MSNBC, CNN, establishment, legacy media, is they don't want to talk about the issues. So that said, Donald Trump losing seniors because he's also, by the way, telling older people that they should be sacrificed for the economy. Turns out that's also not a good position to have. Older people are more susceptible to coronavirus, of course, and that's a big reason to why he's losing seniors, is because his response on coronavirus has been so just abysmal. And again, add to that, you should sacrifice your life for the economy. No, that's not, nope. And Biden, I give Biden a lot of shit because I don't like Biden personally. And I can't wait till after the election to fight against him. But he's actually politically smart on this issue because he's saying, and this is what he told Florida seniors at a campaign event. He said, quote, and he gave an example of Donald Trump talking about how coronavirus affects virtually nobody. He said, quote, "To Donald Trump, it's simple, not a joke. You're expendable. You're forgettable. You're virtually nobody. That's how he sees seniors. That's how he sees you." That is incredibly effective messaging, especially to the senior community, which, again, is a very reliable voting bloc. And so you get the seniors, you're much more likely to be able to win the election, especially in places, like I said, Florida, of which the senior vote is very, very important. So you got to give him credit for being able to campaign on that specifically. He's real good. He did real good on that one. And so, that's good messaging. So now I want to give you some comments here because the internet had some fun with this. Just to kind of cap off the story in sort of a fun way. Tommy Vieter says this: "Sick burn, sir. Let those old farts know that their time is up." Of course, under that, this image, of course. Helen Kennedy says, "Probably wise to write off the senior vote at this point. You're already losing them badly." Mark Joseph Stern says, "My 91-year-old grandfather who has Alzheimer's lives in a long-term care facility. I can't see him in person because of COVID-19. This is generally sickening. Our elders deserve better." MSNBC host Chris Hayes says, "Trump 2020, nursing home residents are disgusting jokes." And Josh Jordan finally says, "When you're badly underperforming with seniors and decided to attack Biden by mocking seniors." So, I don't know. If you want to win an election, you might not want to go with mocking the people who helped you win election last time. He's losing the seniors. He's losing the women. He never really had anybody else. But hey, he's doing good with white men. So I guess at least he's got that. All right. Some comments here. I like this one. Tempo Dan says Biden's a joke, but Trump is a cancer. Yes, very true. Very true. Trump prevents war, but Obama and Bush wanted it. I mean, the reason you get into foreign policy and you look at, for example, what Trump wanted to do with Venezuela, he's not exactly an anti-war candidate. Like, you kind of have to understand that, too. He does things, okay. So he does things like launch missiles at Syria. I was totally against that. He would also claim that he's the most warmongering person ever and was smarter than the generals. This guy, I don't take this guy seriously at all. So if you think Donald Trump's an anti-war person, he certainly has tried to get us into conflicts. And no. All right, anyway. Trump abandons the Kurds as well. Yeah, there's that. Don't forget Iran. Trump would have happily gone to war with them or Venezuela. Again, supporting a coup in Venezuela and publicly talking about invading Venezuela and, again, talking about how bad Iran is. Now, the fact that he hasn't done it is because he's deeply incompetent and also can't stay on task. And so we're actually lucky in that regard, but that doesn't mean he's an anti-war president. It just means that he's not focused enough to do it. Anyway. Random Lime says, my grandfather would have been passionate about Sanders and is surely rolling over in his grave now that he's almost smashed the TV during Reagan. Yeah, Random. Again, there are a lot of older people, massively progressive, and not even massively progressive, that saw that Bernie Sanders was the right person to go and support. And it's just unfortunate. I really do think that a lot of this is cable news. Cable news was massively against Bernie Sanders, would constantly lie about Medicare for all and Social Security and things like that. And unfortunately, that got to the senior community, and it just wasn't time for Bernie Sanders, which sucks. Goku Jasayan says he allowed Turkey to slaughter the Kurds and Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen. Yes, yeah. Whatever happened to stopping the war in Yemen? He doesn't care. He doesn't care about anybody else. And that's the other reason, right? You can't just say that he's anti-war because he just doesn't give a shit about foreign policy and allowing Israel to kill Palestinians. Also, good point. All right, anyway. Twitch here. I'm sorry I haven't been reading as many comments on Twitch here, but there's some great stuff. Void Queen says, progressive old people, the light of my life. Agreed. Yes. Let's see. S. Bloom says it's salty alt-right. Okay. And Circle Strat says spray tan and orange at that. Toupee, and he claims to be the real deal. He's the fake one in the story. Does Trump even know the description on the word policy? I doubt very much that he does. All right. That said, let's go to one story about Amy Coney Barrett. And it's about what you would expect if she ends up on the Supreme Court. So let's go to, no, not that. I'm just pressing buttons here. All right. The confirmation hearings of Amy Coney Barrett continue as we find out more about her short tenure as a judge. And from what we've seen, it's not good. The Associated Press recently published a report on Ms. Barrett's most notable judicial opinions, which included what I want to talk about, 2019 discrimination case. So now she penned the majority opinion against a transportation worker that was allegedly suing after he was let go. In that opinion, she said that the use of the N-word in the workplace does not create a hostile or abusive work environment. So your superior uses the N-word at you as a black person, and for some reason she believes that does not create a hostile work environment. Oh, great. In the ruling, Ms. Barrett said that while she found the use of the word abhorrent, and this, of course, is on behalf of a unanimous three-judge panel that issued this ruling, she said the plaintiff in the case had not made a strong enough case that there was actual harassment. The N-word, she says, is an egregious racial epithet. That said, the plaintiff can't win simply by proving that the word was uttered. He must also demonstrate that a supervisor of the word altered the conditions of his employment and created a hostile or abusive working environment. I got news for you. If you're constantly or if you're calling your subordinate who happens to be black the N-word, then that's kind of a bad environment to be in. It doesn't exactly foster an environment of mutual respect and friendship. I'm just saying. And racism, again, people with racist attitudes definitely foster a hostile work environment. A racist person, by definition, holds negative feelings towards people of a certain demographic and would theoretically treat that person differently than he would treat someone who does not have a different skin color than they do. So Barrett and the other judges in the panel, however, did not agree with that. So now what's interesting about this case is that aside from being about race, it was actually a workplace discrimination lawsuit filed by Terry Smith. Terry Smith is a black Illinois transportation employee who sued after he was fired. So now they go into talking about how, no, it was he was actually fired because of his record. But this guy says, I was fired, and then I was called the N-word. And so, I think that this is about racism. I think I was fired because I was black. So now Smith's claims include that he was called a racial slur by his supervisor, Lloyd Colbert. So now, when you look at this, I don't think it's just only race that's involved in here. I think she ruled on behalf of corporations because that's who she serves. It makes sense because she's a conservative justice, and they tend to believe that racism is no big deal. Of course, they do that in addition to supporting corporations. And so I think it's a little bit of a mixture, not just specifically racism, but also corporations are always right. And so what's really interesting about that position is the fact of who disagreed with that position at the time. Here you had now Supreme Court, and this was back before he was on the Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh disagreeing with her ruling. Here's what he said. No other word in the English language so powerfully or instantly calls to mind our country's long and brutal struggle to overcome racism. A single sufficiently severe incident may create a hostile work environment. So Brett Kavanaugh was actually correct on this when he said, hey, no, use the N-word at work. That is a hostile work environment. Regardless of what happens, that is hostile. And so he's absolutely correct on that issue. And look, many users on social media, by the way, did point out how Barrett had two adopted black children. And they asked correctly if she would feel the same if the word was used against them when they entered the working world. So would it be a hostile work environment if your kids, black children, were called the N-word? Or would she just say, oh, suck it up. You need more proof that it creates a hostile work environment. Well, I don't know. I mean, I would hope so. But then, as we've seen many times, conservatives operate by a simple principle, right? It's okay until it happens to them. Now, once it happens to them, that's when they get outraged. That's when the fire comes out. But to me, again, this seems like very pro-corporate and ignoring racism. And it's pro-racism, saying, hey, you can go ahead and call black people the N-word, because turns out it really doesn't create a hostile work environment on its own. And really, that kind of shows you where she's at on these issues. When it comes to matters of importance, racism is going to get the back burner, and protecting corporations and that is always going to be at the forefront of her judicial opinions, which is exactly what, of course, conservatives are looking for when it comes to a Supreme Court justice who will be deciding on lots of cases involving corporate power. So I think this is just a little bit of a preview how she's going to look on both labor issues, labor disputes, as well as cases of discrimination in the workplace. And it's not going to be good. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. It's all the time I've got. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Thank you, Twitch. Let's see. Let me read a comment here. I don't think it's Circle Strat says I don't think it's about corporations being right, but rather if the check clears to politicians. That's a fair point. As Bloom says, she's secretly a Trump mistress. Tiffany Starr, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. Go check out her channel, of course, on Twitch as well, and on YouTube. Let's see. ACB does not answer hypotheticals, says Anonymous. And let's see. Mr. Elder points out that white supremacy is illegal in Germany, but it's illegal for a reason. It's illegal because between 60 and 70 million people died because of white supremacy. It's a dangerous ideology. I agree with all that. So, Laura Ingram adopted a black child, and she isn't racist at all. Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I'm going to give you some links in order to help us out. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. I'm sorry. Is it a slash? It's a slash. Thank you for liking the stream and watching. Please tune in again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern right here on Waldorf Nation. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody. We'll see you later. Stay safe.
Please clap. Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Your son writes.
Wet ass P-word.
Thailand.
Mike Pounds.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.